listening to Radio Cosmos.
All night long.
Bravo! My compliments, little lady.
Commercial!
Break for 30 seconds.
You are now listening to BaaD Radio.
Hello and welcome to BaaD Radio. BaaD stands for Business at a Distance. This is a show about local businesses and business networking. We are here in the News Radio WFLA studios from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. every Sunday. I'm your host, Angela Smorito, and in studio with me, we have our lovely Melissa Jacob.
Oh, hello. Hi, everyone. Adoring fans.
Melissa's business is called Striking Brand. And if you go to baadradio.com, that's BAAD radio.com, under the episodes page, you can see all the previous episodes on YouTube. So she does a beautiful job. And if you go to strikingbrand.com, you can see all of Melissa's other work because in addition to being a videographer, she is a photographer as well.
I just did a bunch of Santa pictures, so that was fun. It was completely different than
a Santa photo shoot?
Yeah.
Was it for a family?
For a neighborhood. So my neighborhood just had all the kids like line up, take a bunch of Santa pictures with my daughter. Yeah, it was fun.
Oh, that's so good. Are they going to put it, like, post it somewhere?
Oh, yeah. I posted them all on like the Facebook neighborhood page,
Beautiful.
and then they can pull them and use them for like Christmas pictures.
That's so sweet. That's a good idea.
Yeah,
but we have a new guest today. Please welcome Jay Godwin with Fierce Law and Credit.
Hi, Jay.
Thank you. Excited to be here. Big fan, by the way.
Big fan.
You're going to have to talk like more into your microphone there. All right, say something.
How about something?
Nope, that works much
All
better.
right, fantastic.
All right, now we're going to go into the networking news, and that is brought to us by Symphonic CBD, which is a branch of Live Your Best Life, and they are both advocates for Green Compass Global. Green Compass products are USDA, organic, lab-tested, non-GMO, made in the USA, and cruelty-free CBD products, and they are key to making calmness a habit. They also have CBD for our fur babies, and to get more information about the benefits of CBD, visit symphonic-cbd.com. That's symphonic-cbd.com. So when I was thinking about the networking news today, I thought about Jay. Jay and I met at Kava Culture.
Okay.
And Jay's there quite a lot. But what I wanted to talk to you is about the power of like the places of networking. So, you know, when I bring it up, I'm like, okay, so sometimes you have networking events in big facilities. Sometimes you have them in coffee houses. Sometimes you have them at kava bars. What are some of your favorite places to have or to where you feel like you get the best networking done?
Honestly, anything that's more intimate.
Right.
So when you started talking about the bigger places, I was like, ooh, like that just feels like so much of like a handing out business cards type atmosphere. Whereas like when I would do one-to-ones in BNI, it would always be like at Panera or Starbucks. Like,
did you like the Paneras and the Starbucks
Yeah.
for meeting places?
Yeah, it just seems more intimate. I'm trying to think if there was ever any place that I like really, really loved it.
Where you felt like there has been a couple of times where I've been a guest for something and we are meeting at a restaurant and it was so non-functional because
Why? It was so loud and stuff.
They had us like in a table that was like a V and you couldn't get in and out. You know, you had the servers that were coming around, handing stuff around you. And then like if I wanted to meet the lady across the way there, I had to wait for the meeting to be over.
You're talking about like multiple people. Like, restaurants are the worst because it's always like a long table, always. Like, so you can't meet anyone else except for like whoever happens to be sitting like next to you. That's it. And even then it's kind of weird because you're like, like, you know what I mean?
Well, I think what it is you make eye contact with somebody and then you're like, okay, you try to bob and weave through the people to get to that person.
Right.
And then along the way, you're trying to have conversations. And then, I don't know, like I am much more for, like you're saying, the more intimate type of places.
There was actually a Chamber of Commerce event. I think it was for like their 40th year anniversary.
Which chamber?
The Seminole, Oviedo Winter Springs.
Okay.
And I don't know what it was for, if it was their 40th or if it was just like the new building, something like that. But they had like food and then they had some of the people that were in the chamber. That was really cool because it was like a celebration of just like in general, but then it was all business people too. So they had food and
I think
like,
I came. Didn't I go to that?
You came.
Okay. I think I was there.
I really liked that one. Like, because it was like, it wasn't like how you're saying you're like seated and you can't move. It was like, you know.
Yep, definitely. How about you, Jay? A minute. You're at Kava Culture a lot, so he does. I think he should probably have to pay rent there.
That's one of your favorites too, huh?
Yes,
I do actually pay rent, but no, I prefer things that are a little bit more relaxed, which is why I base myself at Kava Culture.
Yeah.
Coming from the financial services industry, early on, a lot of our networking was done in more structured events.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very difficult to really dig into things or get into any meaningful conversation like that.
Right.
So I love places like Kava Culture where it's a little more relaxed.
In your line of work, do you go to like conventions and things of that nature where you kind of go from booth to booth and talk with people and shake hands and pass cards and do that kind of thing?
A lot of our people do. I typically don't, based on the way that our businesses originated. I typically don't, but we have in the past. And again, it's very difficult to build any type of meaningful relationship in a situation like that.
I know. I went to a roofing convention. I know that sounds weird, but I was there, and and I did find it a little bit difficult to really like get hold of the people that I wanted to. And then when I saw the people that I wanted to talk to, I didn't want to interrupt the conversations that they were already having. And so do I think conventions and things on a bigger scale are good, but not so much for networking, I guess you could say. I don't know. Like I said, and whenever BNI has like the big group get-togethers, it's just so loud. I can't. By the time I leave, I'm so stressed out because of all the background noise and everything like that. It's not meant for networking. It would be more for just like having drinks with people or something like that.
Right. Right. So you like Kava Culture because it's more like chill?
Yeah, it's a lot more relaxed. Like I said, you're talking about the conventions. I mean, I think those are great places to begin to gather information, maybe cards, see new businesses that you haven't seen or done business with. But once you get beyond that, I prefer something that's quite a bit more relaxed, and you can sit down and really delve into product offerings.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also for like places like Kava Culture, it's an environment where it's not super loud. They're not usually blasting the music. You can get like I've held business meetings there over Zoom, just like in the corner and stuff, and it worked out really well. And then they've also done this outside seating, which is really nice over there as well. They do a great job. They have a nice long bar, and it's usually, like I said, not chaotic. So I've done lots of one-to-ones there.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I know. I had one of the girls from my BNI there, and she had a kratom drink with me, and next thing you know, she was like, "Oh, I feel weird." I was like, "Oh, I forgot to warn you about that a little bit."
I did that to someone too on accident.
Y'all. Oh my gosh.
I was like, "You're supposed to eat a little bit before you have that." Just saying. But it was all good. So yeah, I think that, like I said, in the world of networking, I think that the big groups and the big organizations and stuff like that, like going to the bigger ones is great when you're starting out.
Yeah.
But maybe when you're kind of getting into, like I said, more individual one-to-ones. So I meant like for your particular business. And when we come back we're not going to break yet, but when we come back, we'll dive a little bit more into it. But from what I understand, your business is much more on a one-to-one level. Do you do like speaking events and things like that?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
But again, when we speak, it's basically to deliver a broad message.
Okay.
It gives people an idea of the different aspects of our product offering. And people, I find myself in situations where people are trying to develop those networking type of conversations, but in that atmosphere. And, somebody's really trying to dig into a conversation, but they have 10 people behind them who are also trying to gather information from you. And
right. See, I'm too, I don't know if I'm ADHD or OCD or whatever it is. My mind can't focus on one person when I see multiple things happening in the room.
Right. Is there a place where it's like too intimate to where it's like,
I don't know, like somewhere like, I had one guy that he was like wanted to meet with me, but he only met after hours, and he wanted to meet over a bottle of wine. And I was like, yeah, that's not happening.
Not that kind of one-to-one guy.
I ended up booting him out of business at a distance. I was like,
oh, you kicked him out of the whole group?
Because I was like, I'm sorry, I don't drink. And he was like, well, neither do I. I'm like, you just stop.
Yeah, a bottle of wine, but don't drink. Okay. Makes sense.
He's not fooling anyone. That's funny.
So yeah, I think that like there's definitely some
There's a
places
line.
that are on the line of inappropriate
there's a
for
line.
one-to-ones. But overall, so like I'm gonna give another plug to Kava Culture in Winter Springs because it is a great place to go and hang out. Melissa and I have met there before. I see Jay all the time, and I consider him kind of family. Okay, all right, we're gonna go to break, and when we get back, we'll have more BaaD Radio.
Welcome back to BaaD Radio, brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore, because a couple that plays together stays together.
Welcome back, and this portion of the show is brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore. It's getting cooler out there, and so it's time to cuddle up with your loved one. But first, a trip to Premier Couple Superstore. Premier Couple Superstore has got a huge selection of lingerie, shoes, toys, games, love oils, and a ton of great gifts. With Premier Couple Superstore, you don't pay those high prices because you go directly to the source. 5009 South OBT or shop online at premiercouples.net because a couple that plays together stays together.
Oh, yeah.
Got it that
I
time.
know. They're on it.
I was a
love
slacker
it.
last week. We had to redo.
All right. So we're here with Jay with Fierce. Okay. So we have a whole lot of Fierces going on here. So, your shirt right now says Fierce Financial. So let's talk about that. What is Fierce Financial? And the logo is just like beautiful, by the way.
Lion face.
Yes. I'll have to tell you the backstory to that logo. And that actually was started at Kava Culture as well.
Was it really?
Just throwing that out there. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. The Fierce Financial Services is a group of companies that are fiercely fighting for individual consumers.
Okay.
So we have Fierce Law Group, which with Fierce Law Group, we specialize in what's called FCRA, Fair Credit Reporting Act litigation.
Okay.
So people that have issues on their credit report that can't get them resolved through normal means, then we have the ability to litigate those in federal court.
So what does that exactly look like? So you can help a person get things taken off their credit?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I probably should have started with Fierce Credit.
Okay.
Like I said, it's a group of different companies that work together to kind of accomplish this goal. Fierce Credit was the initial Fierce company, and it is built around credit restoration, or I hate to use the term credit repair, because you see the signs on the side of the road everywhere for credit repair, but
You think it just sounds cheesy or something?
yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
But I think it definitely serves a purpose. I mean, people need their credit repaired, and they don't know how to do it.
Absolutely. We like to use the term restoration.
I like that
I
as
like
well.
that.
Sounds fancy.
But with Fierce Credit, we use federal laws, and particularly the Fair Credit Reporting Act and the Credit Repair Organizations Act, to legally and permanently remove negative items from credit bureaus, thereby raising the score and allowing people to qualify for normal bank financing again.
Okay, that's cool. So when you say like there's a law that's out there that states certain things, and if creditors are not within that law, then they have to drop it off of the credit report. So when you hire a lawyer and the lawyer's representing your client, who is the lawyer like going after? Is it the credit bureaus, or is it the company that put that lien or whatever it is on there?
Great question, actually. Very great question. When you start looking at litigation, the very first thing that we do is we start them through the credit repair company or credit restoration company. We find items that are misreporting, that have incorrect information, that they're not responding correctly. There's several different ways that they can be in violation with the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So the Fair Credit Reporting Act is kind of like a bill of rights for consumers.
Is that a new thing, or is that something, I still want to hear the rest of that, but I mean, I didn't know if that's like something that's recently been put out, or if it's something that's been historical, that's always been there to protect.
It's been there since the early 70s.
Okay, so it's been a minute.
It has evolved. Obviously, there's always cases that are setting a different precedent for us. So it does evolve, and what's allowed, what's not allowed, and how we respond to that does change kind of with the market. But the Fair Credit Reporting Act has been around since the early 70s. So when we find something that is litigatable, we first give the credit bureaus, the repositories, the ability to correct it. So we will
Okay,
notify
so that's
them.
kind of like doing your due diligence. You're saying, yeah, they say it right, fix it.
Mhm.
Or-
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And, regardless of what people think, law isn't as exciting as you might think. I haven't been able to stand out there and say, you can't handle the truth, or nothing like that. Or at least I do that at the back room of Kava Culture, but nobody listens.
Right.
But it's nothing like that. We don't really want to litigate.
Mhm.
It's a long, drawn-out process. It is a bit of a hassle.
I'm sure it's expensive, too,
It's,
right?
it's expensive. The ROI on our time isn't as great as what you would expect. So we prefer for the bureaus or the individual credit companies to change it and fix it instead of having to go down this path. So we give them the ability to do so. After a certain period of time, we will pull another credit bureau through one of our affiliate partners and cross-reference that with the original credit report to, see how they responded. If they responded, did they correct it? Did they not correct it?
Sometimes they just drop it.
It does. It does happen.
That would
Absolutely.
be ideal, right?
Is that a higher percentage of people that just or do you usually have to fight through every time?
Typically, you're going to, once you get to the point and you realize there's something litigatable, more than likely at that point, you're going to have to go through the process. They don't really acknowledge it as much as I think that they should, or as much as you would expect that they would. But a lot of times in the original process, the credit restoration process, you do get items that delete. They say, you know what, forget it.
We don't have any way to back this up, or like
Right.
that credit card company folded, or there's not anybody else to actually pay that debt to.
Absolutely. And the documentation that we're requiring them to provide sometimes can be very difficult. When you have banks that are constantly trading accounts, and
Right.
it may have started with Countrywide Home Loans, but then it switches to another bank to service it. So
Sounds like my mortgage.
exactly.
How many times has your mortgage been sold?
I don't know. I'm not that person.
I think
I should know.
I think my mortgage is like from the time we bought the house till now, about 20 years has been gone through like 6 different mortgage companies.
sure.
And we've only refied once. So
I'm sure, yeah. Yeah. So,
Um,
again, a lot of times things will come off at that point. But if it does not, then we need to sit down and build out what we call a litigation summary and start the process. So we'll explain out exactly what was incorrect, what was not reporting legally, then turn that over to the attorneys and they begin the process.
Okay. And so is that where compliance comes in, where they have to set by a certain set of rules in order to make all of this happen? And what's the length of that look like? So if I come to you, I've got, I don't know, $650 or something, and I want to refi my house, or I want to buy a car. Let's say I want to buy a car.
Right.
How does that process look from beginning to end? I guess it depends, but let's walk through it.
It does depend. And, when we do credit restoration, we do it a little bit different. A lot of companies will just take disputes and kind of throw them at the credit bureaus in hopes that things will fall. But my program was actually built inside the mortgage business.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I owned a mortgage company for well over 20 years, and I kind of found credit restoration, or what it was designed to be, and took that and kind of rebuilt it from the ground up. But the reality was that getting somebody a greater score isn't necessarily going to get them where we need them to go. And with our program, we don't charge the consumer for credit repair ever, period, which is one of our layers of compliance. But in order for us to make money, we have to get them through underwriting. So when we do what we do, we're going for what we call an underwritable finished product, meaning not only is the score up, but the body of the credit report itself and the individual trade lines themselves will be compliant to go through underwriting. So you actually get an approval instead of just a 680 credit score.
Right. So you take that person and then you just polish them up real good and you get them all nice and clean, and then they're all sparkly, and then they're a perfect client.
Well, we don't promise perfection, but we stay with them until we get them approved.
Right.
So you don't charge for this service?
Not to the
saying?
consumers, no.
And then so how are you saying that you get paid?
Because they want to buy a house.
Well, yeah, we have relationships in several different industries. Right now, by far our largest is in the automotive industry. So the car dealers in particular will turn their clients over to us. We will clean them up based on what we know they have to do to get financed, and hand them back.
Okay.
And then the car dealer will pay us a referral fee to do so.
Nice.
He's got a fat auto dealer account
I see
too.
why that would work.
But you do that in the mortgage business as well?
We do. We do. Like I said, it was actually built out in the mortgage business.
So who would be your client? Do you have realtors that you work with then?
We do. We have realtors, but keep in mind, the realtors typically don't delve that deep into it. It would be the mortgage person
That
in
makes
that
sense.
section.
We're going to talk more about that when we get back from the break. That music means. Okay. What that music means right there is that we're going to break. So
Nice.
So keep that thought, and when we get back, we'll have more BaaD Radio. So stay tuned.
Welcome back to BaaD Radio, brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore, because a couple that plays together stays together.
Welcome back, and this portion of the show is brought to you by Body Street of Winter Park. Experience the future of fitness at Body Street in Winter Park. Lose weight, build muscle, tone your body in only 20 minutes a week. Visit bodystreet.us, where fitness meets efficiency. So I worked out again Tuesday's my day, and today's always my sore day. So if you haven't tried it, you need to give it a go. You should give it another go, Melissa. I think that you'll like it once you get used to it. It's not bad. It really isn't. Melissa and I went, and it's where they hook you up to like this machine, and they kind of zap you as you go through a series of like exercises, and it's called it's EMS, electric muscle stimulation. So
have you ever had like a TENS unit on you?
Yes. Yeah,
it feels just like that, but on your whole body. Simultaneously, and then they want you to do squats and stuff, which is fine. I mean, when you're used to it, it's not so bad. But honestly, I just kind of like the good old fashioned pick up something heavy and sweat type thing, you know?
Oh, you sweat. You definitely sweat.
I'm just saying.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Right. Well, we're here with Jay Godwin with Fierce Law and Credit, and before break, we started to talk about taking somebody's credit, cleaning it up a little bit, and making them a viable client. And we were talking about for auto dealerships, but now and then we were also talking about for mortgages. And so what you were saying, Jay, is that was the premise on how this got started. So you owned a mortgage company and you came across this, and that's why you're like, hey, let's figure out this credit repair thing to make more viable customers. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, there was an incredible need. When I first got into the mortgage business, I was a brand new loan officer, so I got the nice little cubicle in the very back of the building that was next to these, where all the files are stored.
Right.
And you had file cabinet upon file cabinet upon file cabinet that was just turn downs, and the majority of them were from credit. And I thought, if we could find a way to help them and monetize those, and that's kind of where it started.
So how many of those like that just have bad credit are
fixable?
Repeat offenders, or is it just like bad luck, and then they don't know how things work, and so then they don't get it fixed, and it just kind of snowballs?
That's actually a great question. What we find is that about 30% of the traffic that comes to a car dealer or a solar company or a mortgage company, about 30% of the people that come to them have credit issues that would prevent them from securing a paper credit. Now, do we see repeat offenders? Of course we do, absolutely. But what we've tried to do over the years is instill a little bit of education with them as well. So again, it's not just credit repair, throwing stuff at the bureaus, hoping they delete. When we sit down and look at a credit report, we'll begin to say, okay, Mr. Customer, I notice you have 8 credit cards and they're all maxed. Do you really need 8 credit cards? Is that the best, the best way to handle your money? So we're teaching them as well as using some debt elimination tactics, some of the Dave Ramsey type stuff to help them.
Ultimately, the problem is that people just want to live above their means, and by doing so, they use their credit, and then they can't figure out how to get that down because it makes sense. You have too much on your credit cards, pay it off, but yet they don't want to stop spending at the level that they have been spending.
Absolutely.
So you're having to deal with people and their habits.
Probably that. And also, do you find that it's a lot of education too? Because you don't learn anything like this when you're in school. And if your parents don't know, then now you don't know.
That's exactly what I was about to say. I have a son now who's in high school, and we talk about things like amoebas. I can still tell you what an amoeba is, though I've never seen one, and I don't think I'll ever bump into one.
That's probably a good one.
In my life.
Yeah, I mean, they don't hang out in caviculture that I know of. So
brain-eating organism.
Remember that River Country back in the day? But no, these kids are coming out of school now, and they don't even know how to balance a checkbook. So
they don't know what a checkbook is.
Exactly. I mean, it's an incredible lack of education. But there are other life factors that happen too.
Right.
We have divorce is a huge one. People get injured.
A change of career.
Unexpected change of career. COVID. Did a lot of that.
Because people weren't having the income, so they were subsidizing their bills with credit cards. I see. For me, like credit. I did take when I used to work in this building. When I left here, I took a huge pay cut, and we had more. We had our mortgage. We had things we had to pay, so the credit took a hit. But I just figured out like it's like an ebb and flow for our credit. I know that I'm like we have something that we want to purchase coming up that I know I'm going to need financing. Let me pay attention for a little bit, and
Right.
there's like little tricks here and there, but it took me a long time to figure that out.
Right.
I don't think I even use a credit card at all. I think I have one just as like a backup, but it like pays off like immediately.
Yeah,
like at the end of the month.
that's
Right.
a good.
Does that help build your credit? If it's one of those, it's a credit card, but you pay it off at the end of the month, does that help?
I'm curious for the answer for this.
Yeah, typically you want to let it roll over from month to month so that the bureaus will register the activity.
Okay.
So it's like as long as you keep 30% or below and you make payments on it, you hold a balance. Is what I understand.
Well, that's one of the things that's a big misconception. Lack of credit, believe it or not, is more difficult to overcome than bad credit.
Right.
Oh, what's the easiest way if you have like no credit to start building it?
Well, there's a
Secured
couple
credit
of
card.
easy things. The secured credit card, a lot of people like. Keep in mind that I have to come from more of an educational type approach. And I don't preach credit cards to my people. When you're talking about 24.65% interest, it's a little hard to justify if you're trying to educate people.
So what do you suggest?
Well, one of the first things that we do is we have a bank, and now actually a couple of banks that will issue credit to people, sometimes even with no credit pull, for the reason simply of helping them build trade lines. Now it's a small amount,
Like a couple $100 or something?
Typically they can pick their payment, which will determine their dollar amount. So I believe the base is like $23 or $28, something like that.
Do you have to have any collateral to put down?
No. And now what they'll do is they'll make their payments to the bank.
Right.
And the bank actually sets it up also as a savings building program. So typically
Very
people
cool.
are in this situation, they probably don't have a whole lot of savings either.
Right.
And that's one of the things that we try and teach people going into home ownership for the first time. We want them to go in and get the ability to obtain home ownership, but also maintain it. Through
But
the
you don't
storm.
get paid for that either? You don't charge for that?
Well, some of the things that like I said, there are other products that we know that we can monetize. So, there's compliance issues in the mortgage industry,
Okay.
just as there's compliance issues in the real estate industry. And those often vary from state to state as well. So there are other ways that we can monetize the situation. And I made a decision a long time ago. We've had car dealers that say, we'll send you 300 people a month, but some of those people might not buy. Well, I mean, that's just the rules of the game. We know that we're going to help people.
I mean, that's me. Like I said, I can pitch business all day long, and I'm not going to close 100% of it, even though I'd
Absolutely.
love to. It's not going to happen.
Well, when you help people with this type of a problem, too, you develop a level of trust. So they're still going to call us when they need things.
Okay.
I had people that have been with me for a decade that will call and say, "Hey, I just saw this car ad, and I'm thinking about doing this."
Right.
And we've closed their file 9 years ago, 10 years ago, and they're still calling. So
That says a lot. I mean, and then think about it. They probably refer their kids, and as they grow, you know what I mean? As they age out and their kids are coming up, then they're probably saying, "This is the guy to call. This is the guy to call."
I could definitely see that though, because once you help somebody with their financial stability, that's huge. So
Yeah.
I could definitely see people calling you back for like random stuff. Hey, I'm in Target.
Yeah,
I just want to see if it's cool.
Should I get this card?
I'm gonna let you know how much it comes to. Tell me if it's good or not.
Yeah, you'd be amazed at some of the calls we get. But it's very it's very exciting to be able to help people.
Is there
in
times
that way.
when you can't help?
There is. Sometimes we come into a situation where people have habits that just won't die. And, perhaps they have a short-term goal. I want to buy a car, don't care about anything else. There's also a couple of items that I try to refrain from going after. Child support is now reported to the credit bureaus. And
oh, really?
yeah. And, I'm not saying that we won't help with it, but we're not going to go after it and delete it. If there's a misreporting, we'll fix it.
Right.
If there is a child support debt, keep in mind, we're not just a credit repair company. We'll sit them down and say, we've got to work this through. Let's figure out how to get this.
It sounds to me like you should be charging for counseling fees is what it sounds. All right. So hold all that because we are going to go to break. So stay tuned for more BaaD Radio.
Welcome back to BaaD Radio, brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore, because a couple that plays together stays together.
Welcome back, and this portion of the show is brought to you by Ground Up Property Services. With the changing of seasons, now is a good time to get your irrigation system serviced, so call Ground Up Property Services today. It's a very good idea to ask Rick Hall with Ground Up about a water sensor, too, so your lawn doesn't get too much water. And don't forget about the lawn painting service. If you're planning an outdoor event and you want to hide those brown spots on the lawn, call 407-468-4295 or visit groundupinc.net. We're here, and we've already been talking for a half hour with Jay Godwin with Fierce Law and Credit, so we still have one full segment. So what else do you have going on? I mean, what's coming up for you guys?
Well, if that wasn't enough, I can certainly bring more.
Well, I know you well enough to know that you never sit still, so I know you've always got something cooking.
That's true. ADHD has served me well. Absolutely.
I found that often.
Yeah, use it to your benefit, right?
Absolutely, you should. We got a lot of really exciting things going on. We having been in the industry for so many years, I was in the industry during the mortgage meltdown.
2008?
2006, 2008. I know I don't look that old.
He just had a happy birthday to Jay. It was yesterday.
29.
Happy birthday.
Happy 29.
Thank you. Absolutely. But we, as I watched things crumble down around us in the mortgage industry in 07, 08, 09, I kept thinking to myself, there has to be a better way. None of us really expected. We all knew that with some of the mortgage products we were using, we knew that.
Oh, you mean like the 100% financing and
yeah,
any schmo with the pulse got a house?
Those are the ones. I think we all knew that there were going to be some changes in the industry, but we didn't expect what happened. And, for me, again, I tend to be very close to our clients. I built relationships with our clients. So when the foreclosures started, it wasn't just numbers or brick and mortar for me. These were real families.
Right.
And these were people with Thanksgiving dinners and Christmas mornings and feet pajamas. It really impacted.
Yeah.
So
I couldn't imagine. I'm such a sucker. I'd be like, how can I just come over? You can stay here.
Yeah. And it kind of has pushed me my entire career from there, quite honestly. And so we're releasing a product now, and actually this is the first place that we have talked about it publicly.
All right, woohoo!
Yeah,
you heard it first on BaaD Radio.
That's right. That's right.
It'll give you some urgent music.
I like that. It's the product that we have is Fierce Foreclosure Prevention Program.
Okay.
We're starting to see, especially after COVID, we're starting to see that people are ending up in this situation again. They're behind on their mortgage. And delinquency ultimately will lead to default. And default, by the time that people get to the default period, which is about 4 to 5 months, and
I was about to ask that question. I know that everybody was being very kind, and there was had some leniency. But from what I heard, all that's done and over now. It's like, listen, it's time to get caught up.
Yeah, and quite honestly, the leniency itself. I mean, there really wasn't a set plan on how to get from here we are this far behind, now we got to get back to good. So people are struggling with a way to get back to good, so to speak. And traditionally in this industry, we do things like loan modifications that may or may not be done to the best benefit of the consumer. Again, always coming from the consumer side, I have my preferences to that. Typically, it would lead also to short sale type situations, property liquidations. So what we've done is we've created more of a consumer-based program.
Okay.
It starts with education.
Well, so it's basically to help somebody not go into foreclosure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So does somebody come to you when they're starting to get behind, or is that just like a something that I'm like, hey, I want to have this insurance policy, so I'm going to be part of this program?
It typically starts when we prefer that it start when they realize that they're in trouble.
Okay.
Oftentimes, though, it usually the introduction will come when they're 30 days or I'm sorry, 3 months behind, going in 4 months behind, and it's an incredible sense of urgency. I've got to fix this right now, right now. But the sooner that we get involved in a problem, the sooner that we can fix it.
Well, I meant the top priority is to keep them in their home, right?
Oh, of course.
Right.
Of course. And that's a problem with a lot of the programs. I mean, the top priority is get the house. And, the real estate investors do an incredible job. They really do. If it's done ethically and responsibly, they do a great job of helping the economy recover. But, what we do is more consumer focused. If we can keep them in the home and it's a responsible financial decision, then that's what we're going to do. But if it comes down to a final decision and, we need to liquidate the property before it turns into a foreclosure, then we're going to help them do that as well.
Right. So maybe downsize them? Is that something?
That's the plan, is to downsize them. I don't want to lose the home ownership. Obviously, this is the largest purchase that a lot of people are going to make in their life. So if we have to help somebody liquidate the property, then we typically try and use our inventory of properties to help them lease option a home that they know they're going to buy. It's their home.
Do you help them like pay off their debts responsibly?
Yes.
Because I know that some people would just be like, oh, I've got money now. I'm going to go blow it on whatever.
Yeah. I think that a lot of it's more of a situation of relief. People, even though they may be going, maybe they have a foreclosure, they go through that process. Once they go through it, it's a huge relief.
Right.
And they're like, okay, we can be normal consumers again. And unfortunately, they go to the mall, and the process starts over. It's that.
I'd be like
cycle.
Amazon. No, I'm just
yeah. It's truly a generational cycle that continues and continues. So we try and interrupt that.
So that's a new product, and
it is, yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to really ask you is what does a consumer look like to you as Fierce grows? I mean, what are you looking for? And if I was going to say I'm going to pass you a referral, what kind of questions should I ask someone, or what I should be listening for when I'm having conversations?
Typically, anyone that's having or has had financial issues. We can meet people. It's one of the great things about our program is we can meet people regardless of where they are in their walk.
Okay.
And we do see all kinds. We see people that are later in life and maybe going through a divorce or loss of a loved one, things along those lines. We also see people that are coming, right out of college with their new credit card debt that they got in college.
Right.
So really anybody that's any point during their financial walk, but somebody that needs a little bit of help.
Right.
What we've done is we've kind of taken our product and put it into several different markets, whether it be the automotive industry. So, again, we help car dealers.
Is that your big piece right now?
That's the biggest piece,
right?
The biggest volume. We do an awful lot in the solar industry.
Oh.
Yeah. Solar is credit driven as well.
Right.
And they're very specific into the guidelines. Typically, it's a 650 credit score or higher.
Well, I know that when I was on the call list for I don't know how I got on it, but I was getting like a call every other day from somebody trying to sell me solar. And all I had to do is say, oof, my credit's like below 600. Can you still help me? And I was like, click.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's mean. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But
So
it's the truth.
it is unfortunately the truth. Yeah. But our customers come from plenty of segments of the business world.
But if I was listening to somebody and they're like, "Hey, I'm gonna have to get a new car," or "Little Billy's turning 16, but my I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to afford it, or my credit's not looking good," I can say, "Hey, call my guy Jay."
Absolutely. The affiliates that we have are very trusted. They're very well vetted. We know them well. We do business with them ourselves. Am I allowed to say their name?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, David Moss is.
I told him he has a baller account. David Moss. They're good people.
They're amazing people. I consider them to be personal friends now. I can't tell you how many times I've picked up the phone because my clients do need extra help from time to time. And I pick up the phone and said, "Hey, man, I need this." And they do whatever they can do to help people. And, we've got people in every industry that are just like that. And I think that people tend to gravitate towards each other that are like-minded.
Well, think about how much money you make for them, too. They have people that want to buy cars that can't. And
that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
right.
You turn them into a viable customer. Right. So I think that you serve a very important purpose there.
Yeah, I like to think so, yes.
So that music means that we're coming to the end of this portion of the show. So right now, give everybody your contact information and how they can get a hold of you.
Sure. The best way to reach me would probably be through email, or I have a direct line. So my email would be jay@fierce, that's FIERCE, law, LAW, group, GROUP. And my direct line is area code 502-387-8800.
Great.
All right. And you can find me at melissa@strikingbrand.com, or my website is strikingbrand.com.
All right. Well, we're going to go to break, and when we get back, we're going to talk with my buddy Daniel Robosky with Boots to Business. So stay tuned for more BaaD Radio.
You're listening to Radio Cosmos.
All night long.
Bravo! My compliments, little lady.
Break for 30 seconds.
You're now listening to BaaD Radio.
Welcome back as we launch into the second hour of BaaD Radio. I'm going to run through all of the regular info for those of you who might have just joined us. I am Angela Smerito, your host, and we've got our co-host and videographer, Melissa Jacob.
Hello, hello.
Melissa's business is called Striking Brand, but if you go to baadradio.com, that's BAAD radio.com, you can see all the previous episodes of the show there. And if you go to strikingbrand.com, you can see all of her other work because in addition to being a videographer, she is also a photographer.
True.
I speak the truth. So for the second half of the show today, we have Daniel Robosky, who I've had in studio once before.
Hey, how are you?
But we know him on the station now from Boots to Business. So thanks for being in. I know I was like, when I was thinking about this is actually going to be the last recorded show of the year because it just gets too much between like Christmas and New Year's and stuff like that. So it's like, let's have Daniel come on in. So the last time you were in here, you were with Coastal Claims. We've had a change since then, right?
Oh, we've had a lot of changes since then. So yeah,
and that was what, about 3 months ago, maybe?
Yeah, no, it's been
August.
Yeah, 3 or 4 months. Yeah.
Lots of changes.
Lots of changes. So I was, as you said, I was with Coastal Claims, and I kind of did a personal shift into trying to be more on an educational platform, doing a lot more public speaking, obviously focusing on the radio show. And, we had a very amicable separation. And actually my guest for my show later on is one of the guys from Coastal who.
Well, they're also one of your sponsors.
They are one of my sponsors.
Obviously a very good.
Yeah, there's no bad blood there at all. And, they are definitely still, everything that we talked about the last time I was on here, they still do all of that, right? I mean, and if anything, they've probably expanded and grown since then. I've spent a lot of time, obviously, every week coming in doing this. I've been on a lot more platforms talking about different operational specific things, not necessarily the public adjusting side anymore, because that was really never, while it was something that I did and I was licensed to do and I have a good knowledge base there, my skill set was always primarily on the operation side of things. So implementing processes and trying to get things to be more efficient in your company and things like that. So now I'm doing a lot more individualized consulting in that space. And it's kind of cool.
That's the Robosky Consulting,
It
correct?
is, yeah. So Robosky Consulting is a PA firm by license and by business entity. And it exists and it does a handful of claims that kind of get dropped in here and there. But primarily we do actual business consulting. So since I've left Coastal, probably once a month at least, I'm going to some new company, helping them do.
Yeah. What does a business come to you in search of?
So for me, my reputation kind of precedes me in that space of they know they're set and ready to grow or scale, and being able to delineate between those two is important. But they know they're at that point where they have to start taking off hats. They know that they're like, hey, I've grown to X and I no longer want to be in charge of these, 4 or 5 departments within my own company. So then they look for a consultant like me. I come in, I spend a period of time looking at what they have in place already, because every business is different. You can take 10 roofing companies and they're all going to be completely different.
Right.
And then we start to identify the areas that are the biggest headaches for them. And then we say, okay, this is what we need to do. We need to start establishing certain things here. We need to add some processes. We need to take certain things off the certain people's plates, specifically the CEO president role, which is hard for some of them to do. A lot of them don't want to do that.
Do you ever have to say, hey, listen, this person's cancer, you need to get rid of them?
Yes.
Because that's where I see it's like sometimes people, it can be just one individual that can throw off the entire, I don't want to call it ecosystem, but the system, the internal internal system of somebody's business.
Oh, 100%. And it is hard because a lot of times that one person is related to somebody,
right.
they're a good friend,
Always.
or they've been there the longest, you know, and there is, I mean, and I get the value and the sentiment behind it, but if you are making the conscious decision, like, okay, we're growing now, you have to be able to identify that maybe not all of the ship members are actually performing a task effectively. Right. And some of those people don't have your company's growth in their best interest. Some of these people want to just live static. Right. Wherever they're at, they want to make their $20 an hour and they're content. They work their 39 and a half hours a week because they're out smoking cigarettes or doing whatever the rest of the time. But
there's a place for that type of person.
There is.
Yeah.
And put them in the appropriate place.
Right.
But a lot of times those people get certain advantages because they've been there for so long, or they are related to
I see what you're
management.
saying.
So, you know,
I was really impressed. There was one show that you guys were talking about overachievers and how sometimes the overachievers can actually, like you said, I don't want to say do damage, but they make the ship not run correctly.
Yeah, they cause chaos. And so it's overachieve or high performing individuals is what I call them.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I get a lot of pushback on that one. A lot of people want to argue with me because it's the high performing person who built the company to that place in the first place, right?
Yeah.
And so they're like, well, no, I wore all these hats. I did all these things. I was able to do and accommodate and facilitate all this growth that we already had. I have no problem with high performing individuals, but if you're going to bring in high performance individuals into your company, you have to place them appropriately.
Right.
And you need to confine them to a task to say, hey, I need you to be the best floor mopper that you can be. I need you to be efficient at doing that one thing. You don't want somebody that you're bringing in to manage a department or a part of your company to then start to stray out into other things that are not something that you hired them for. High performing people will do that inherently just by nature of who they are. And then they cause chaos. And then you have to reel them in. And it's that idea of like, well, I know that Melissa has a task, but she's not doing it as well as I want her to do it, so I'll just do it myself.
Oh yeah, that's me.
So then I'm still paying you, right? The same dollar amount I was paying you, but now I've reduced your workload, right? So now I'm no longer efficient. And getting people to understand that's tough because everybody wants these high performing people, and you should, but you have to build boundaries for them, and you have to create these spaces that they can be effective in what you have for the vision of your company.
Right. I fit that mold, but I've always been able to manage it just by being in a sales position. And even now, like I've always been like in radio sales per se, but I'm limited by the products. I'm limited to the products that radio group has. Now they add to the products, you know, there's X amount of radio stations, and then they add digital here, and then they had events here. So that was always growing, but it was always limited to whatever that company sells. But now with the marketing agency, with Mindful Media Group, I have no cap on if I want to do radio, television, digital. You know what I mean? It's like there's no the sky's the limit with that. So, and I absolutely love being in that position because I don't have to say no.
Right.
And the only time I have to say no is if honestly, and I hate sounding like this, but if their budget isn't gonna do them any good in their business growth.
Yeah, and you live in a place where the pay to play model is actually functional, right? Where I think a lot of different industries try to implement that, and it doesn't work because then you start to get people who may have the financial bandwidth to do things, but not the actual expertise, living in spaces that they shouldn't live in. And the industry that I work in is notorious for that. All these conventions and conferences are all pay to play. And so you get somebody who doesn't really know what they're talking about from a subject matter expert perspective, but they have 10 grand to drop on a conference. And so they're like, yeah, you can come in and speak. And then you get this.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I wasn't following you for a second. Yeah. I was like, I'm not quite understanding what you mean, but okay. So they get like a keynote speaker kind of spot?
Yeah, because they have the money.
Yeah.
Not because they have the expertise.
So you have to pay to be those? I thought you got invited to be a speaker in those situations.
Sometimes.
Okay.
More often than not, you pay. More often than not.
Oh.
Now, when you see somebody
out of... got invited, right?
I would assume that if you were speaking to a group of people about something you're knowledgeable on, it would be based on your knowledge. I know, it's weird.
Yeah.
He's grinning like that's an assumption.
If you see somebody that's not normally in an industry come into an industry specific. So like, I'll give you an example. I was at one in Orlando a couple months ago, and at the same time we were doing a convention, they were doing the coffee Growers of America thing. Smelled amazing in there.
Oh, I bet.
There you go.
But they had guys who were like these prior service military tier 1 guys coming in and speaking about leadership and speaking about those things. Those guys are getting paid because they are not relative to the industry, right? If I go to speak on public adjusting operations, whatever, in my own industry, a lot of times I have to pay for that.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. So music means we're going to break, but when we get back, I want to talk about Boots to Business because that's very important.
I think so.
Not anymore, I don't, Guy. All right, we'll be back with more BaaD Radio.
Welcome back to BaaD Radio, brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore, because a couple that plays together stays together.
Welcome back, and this portion of the show is brought to you by Frogger's Grill and Bar. Are you looking for a good fit or a good gift idea for a friend or family member? How about a gift card from Frogger's Grill and Bar? And I'm talking about food and fun. Also, for a limited time, book a party of 10 or more Monday through Wednesday, and you get 20% off food. You cannot beat that. And don't miss out on Frogger's amazing menu where everything is fresh, never frozen. Oviedo, Mount Dora, Apopka, and Altamont Springs. Frogger's, hopping with food and fun. Kind of like flubbed through the beginning of that one, but we all love Frogger's. I saw Frogger's. They always bring food into Real Radio on Thursdays, and Mike, the area manager, he brings it all in on a cart. That's how much food he brings. It's
That's awesome.
I was
doing it right.
And he knows like the drill. He comes in, he knows which direction to go with the food. He's got.
Is that all like pre-ordered, or is it just something that they do? They just bring in like a smorgasbord.
Yeah, I think Mike knows what they all like now. But the way that it works is like on the radio is when a client buys a certain amount of radio, then they can feed the jocks, and so the radio personalities can talk about it on air. So it's a lot of organic conversation, but you have to be a paying client in order to be able to bring food for the jocks. Yeah, you can't just say, hey, I don't want to buy radio spots, but I want to bring food in for them. That's not allowed.
So we're not horse trading for chicken wings?
Nah. Nope. But you know what? I'm sure we could bring. Like I said, I've got strings over there I can pull for Frogger. So, all right. So the last time Daniel was here, and that's when he and I first actually met, and we had lots of conversations about public speaking. And I did bring up the idea to him about a radio show, and he got back to me and he was like, "Okay, let's talk about that." And next thing you know, you have a radio show, and it's very well structured. It's called Boots to Business, and I even remember us going back and forth on names.
We did, yeah.
And did you already have an idea of what you wanted this show to be about before we even started putting the pieces together?
I think to a degree, yes. I always kind of live in two spaces in my head. I have like the passion side of what I do, which is very veteran related when it comes to trauma and PTSD and things like that. And then obviously there's the business side, which is very operations and process driven. And I think at a minimum, the idea was to always try and figure out a way to blend those two things together. And not that it's like an exclusive thing, right? Because I've had guests on the show that are not prior service, but we spend most of the time talking about business. And I've had guests that are prior service and not necessarily in a leadership or management role in their company, and we talk a lot about their time in service. So,
well, that's one of the benefits of having your show. It's your show.
Yeah, and I think
you can talk about what you want to.
It ends up being more conversational, right? So it's been a really cool experience for me.
Yeah. So the premise of Boots to Business is transitioning from life in the military to civilian life, and in a business aspect. And on your show, you talk a lot about what that looks like. And one of the things is that you talked about, which I thought was interesting, was not misconceptions, not stereotypes, but what's the other word where you just automatically assume somebody's going to be a certain way because they're ex-military?
Predispositions.
Maybe.
That's what I use. I use that word a lot.
And so you see that happen a lot. You see employers like, okay, he used to be in the military. This is what kind of employee he's going to be.
You get, and it's two sides of the same coin, right? So and I've had this conversation a lot more since I started the radio show.
Yeah.
It comes up a lot more organically outside of the show, which is kind of cool too, because it gives me an opportunity to develop some new thoughts on it. But for most people, when they find out that you're prior service, it's one of two versions, but you're not stuck in being one of those two. So you either get the hero version or the chaotic version, right? Like, so this person's going to come in and be very structured and disciplined and a positive impact on my company. And then alternatively, it is that we don't know, this person could be somewhat volatile. We don't know really, were they a good service member? You know, because outside of seeing, you know, if I were to ask you two, what are the types of discharges from the service? What are you going to say? Honorable and dishonorable.
Correct.
That's it.
Yeah.
There's 3 other ones.
Oh,
right?
really?
Really? What are
So you have honorable, you have general under honorable conditions, general, less than honorable, and dishonorable.
Well, don't you just run out of time too? You do your service and then you're out.
So no matter what, even running out of time, you still are assigned one of those discharges.
Right.
Most people, by and large, get an honorable discharge. And that just basically means that you didn't get in a lot of trouble, but you could have gotten in some trouble and still get an honorable discharge. It doesn't really start to affect you until you get to less than honorable and dishonorable.
Okay.
So your general and general under honorable conditions just means that somewhere along the lines you did something and got in trouble, and they just wanted to make sure it's noted on your record. Now,
do employers look at that?
They can.
Are they allowed to?
Yeah. So here's the fun thing about being in the service. All of my military records, if you got a wild hair up your butt, the Freedom of Information Act, you can pull my entire jacket, which then blows your mind on the whole stolen valor thing. It's like people can look this stuff up.
When you say
freely.
Stolen valor, what do you mean?
So the federal government passed a law in like 2015 or 2016, and it basically said, and it's very misconstrued regularly, but the law itself says, I can't sit in a room like this and say that I did things in the service that I didn't do.
Okay.
Where it gets gray is it says specifically for monetary gain. So I can sit in here all day long and be like, I did this, I did this, I did this. If I don't gain anything from it financially, I'm just kind of a jerk, right?
Right.
But as soon as I get somebody who gives me something, or I gain some sort of financial benefit from it, then we're screwed. And it started with a bunch of guys with Purple Hearts. There was a bunch of guys who, because you have to be wounded in combat, in direct enemy conflict, or some iteration of that to get a Purple Heart. There were guys that were going around and they would tell people they had a Purple Heart and they didn't, and you get a lot of benefits when you're a Purple Heart recipient.
Are you talking about just like somebody buys you dinner, or are
no, you get a lot of like federal benefits.
Oh.
You get like free. You never have to pay for your vehicle registration again. Free license plates, free parking. Like it's a bunch of stuff, right? So when my generation started going to war, there was this huge influx of people making stories up, and so they started, and the biggest one was there was some dude on like American Idol or something, and he went all the way to the end telling this whole story about how his buddies were all killed in combat and all this other junk, and then they found out that he never even served, or he did and got kicked out in basic training.
I totally remember that. They were so mad. I mean, the people from
why?
Yeah, everybody's mad.
Stupid.
But it's hard, and I get why people do it. I just I can't wrap my head around how you could actually do it. Does that make sense? Like I get the idea of like wanting because you see somebody in uniform, you're in a restaurant or whatever, and they get attention.
Yeah.
Right. And it's always positive attention, at least here. And so I get the want to have that attention.
Sure.
I just can't wrap my head around
why
you're going to get caught.
Yeah, that's the part.
And the crazy thing is there's so many of these people that do it. They'll go to VFWs, they'll go to states and lobby for veterans benefits. Like some of these people are legitimately doing good things, but the premise of how they got there is all built on a lie. So then they end up getting screwed. So
interesting.
When the stolen valor stuff. So then when you're an employer and you see stories like that on the news, and you see people, let alone actual guys who served, who may be compromising to your own culture. Then you have guys who've made up that they served, and they can come in and be like, I'm a veteran, da-da-da, and then you don't know. And so, most civilian employers don't know how to vet service members. They don't know.
That's what my next question was going to be. So it's not an easy process?
Oh, it is. You just don't know how to do it. It's like public adjusters, right?
Yeah.
They're everywhere. People just don't know they exist.
Right.
So you can ask for their discharge status on a job application and not get in trouble. I think there's a few things on there when everybody gets discharged, you get a form from the government, Department of Defense Form 214. So you hear everybody say DD 214. It has everything. It has every military award you've ever got, every education you went through, how many years you did, how many tours you did, all this stuff. I mean, it's a full overview of your entire service.
When you're an employer, when you go to interview for a job, or they call your previous employer, and that previous employer usually says, I can't give out that information, but I can tell you that they worked here and that I would hire them again or I wouldn't hire them again.
The hard part about any prior service guy is I'm just going to give you some other random dude that I served with because I went through 25 different bosses while I was in the Army.
Right. As far as reference.
Yeah, so I'm going to find somebody that really, really liked me, and I'm going to give you, you know what I mean? So there's a way to manipulate that system, but just like you guys do background checks when you hire somebody off the street, you can do a Freedom of Information Act and figure out at least at a minimum whether their discharge status and whether they're going to fit or not.
Right. Well, that's interesting. I want to talk more about Boost the Business because I really like the show. So we're going to go to break, and when we get back, we're going to talk more with Daniel Robosky. So stay tuned.
Welcome back to BaaD Radio, brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore, because a couple that plays together stays together.
Welcome back. And this portion of the show is brought to you by Liberty Property Inspections. Your home is one of your most important investments, so don't trust it to just anyone. LibertyPropertyInspections.net, helping you protect your investment. And also, I wanted to give a shout out to Forge IT Consulting. They're providing a fully outsourced IT department with a personal touch for small business. ForgeITConsulting.com. We had John on the show like 2 weeks ago, I think it was. And I don't know if you got a chance to listen to it, but he's our IT guy. And I just get a lot of really good listener feedback. I have people reach out to me and be like, hey, how do I find that show? Especially when we talk about cybersecurity and things like that. He's so knowledgeable on that stuff. All right, so we're here with Daniel Robosky, and he's the host of Boost the Business, which is a show that airs right here on WFLA. It's on Sundays at 5 o'clock. And the whole premise of the show is transitioning from life in the military to business life or civilian life, you might call it. And before break, we were talking about stereotypes or what employers sometimes think they're going to get when they hire a vet. And there's different types, though, because I mean, you can be in the military, but that doesn't mean the like people in the military are not just like cookie cutter type people. They're all sorts of different personalities, right?
Correct. And you get the people who see prior service guys as like the Hollywood version, which is always the Green Berets and Army Rangers and Navy SEALs and all those guys. That's one very, very isolated, very small percentage group of service members. I always joke with people. I'm like, I served with guys that I wouldn't let bag my groceries at Walmart. Like they're just because you got to wear the uniform is not an indicator of your efficacy as a employee, right?
Right. I thought you were going to say as a human being.
I was going to say or character.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, and unfortunately, and that's why a lot of times when you see guys who have been through a lot of stuff, they don't talk about it a lot because they don't want that attention, and the guys who have not been through a lot of stuff want to talk about it more because they need that little bit of self-validation or whatever. But yeah, I mean, you don't have any idea just because somebody said prior service on their job application, and there's a huge difference. If I was a skateboarder and I skateboarded for 3 years and then applied for a job at a skateboard shop, I'm not going to have the same qualifications as a guy who did the same job for 20 years, right? So if I did 3 years in the military, 10 years in the military, 20 years in the military, 35 years in the military, it's so vastly different.
Right.
So you can't just lump everybody into one.
Right. Do you see a lot of the people just thinking that they're only should apply for like jobs in the traits?
I think that there is, and I advocate for this a lot, that veterans are prepped to be entrepreneurs. We are prepped to be in expansive leadership positions. And I think the military does a really poor job when guys are getting out of coaching them in that direction. And
what is their responsibility? I mean, do they have like any career, I don't know, like career coaching and when you're getting towards the end of your service?
They do now. There's some things that have come out in the last couple of years, but I mean, I got out in 2012, so it's been 11 years. And when I got out, it was literally, they handed you a packet and you had to go to all these different places on post. So you had to go like to the medics and get cleared. You had to go to dental and get cleared. And it's just them saying, all right, you're good. We don't need to mess with you anymore. And one of those was like a resume. I can't remember what it was called, but you had to go in and write your resume.
Right.
And
Did they help you though?
Yeah. And it was awful. It was this very cookie cutter, like I literally went in there and they said, what was your rank? And I said, I was a sergeant. And they said, okay, for sergeant, you want to make sure you write words like lead people effectively, manage troops of this many, blah, blah. And it was like, if you don't know any better, it sounds great. You're like, oh, this is going to kill it. I'm going to go drop this out into every employer and then I'm going to get all these job offers. No. Now they have a program called the Skill Bridge Network, and my guest Mark that was on from Gold Star Adjusters, he has a nonprofit that helps people coordinate that.
That's cool.
So basically now in your last year of service, you can go work for a civilian company as an intern. The Fed, the Army or branch of service you're in, the government still pays your salary.
Oh, okay.
You as the employer are not required to pay the salary, and then there's no requirement for you to hire them when they get out.
That sounds like a really good setup.
It does. It does.
So many employers don't know about it. Because it's so relatively new. It's a great program, and it's really good for, take these jobs that need some sort of individual licensure, right? And you could do a year of it before you even get out of the service. And
I see what you're saying. No, that would be great.
Take Florida as a public adjuster. You have to be an intern adjuster for a year. Apprentice, that's the word. I was drawing a complete blank there. You have to be an apprentice adjuster for a year before you can get your license. Well, you could do that before you even get out of the service.
Right, and then the military is going to pay for it, and then they get a year of an employee without having to pay for it.
Correct. Whose health insurance is covered. All this stuff. You have no financial obligation other than training that person. Now not anybody can go and just be like, hey, we want to bring some SkillBridge people. There's a vetting process for the employers as well, but.
Yeah.
Up until a couple of years ago, there really wasn't anything. And when you would go to these career fairs, it was a lot of the same places. It was Amazon, it was Walmart, it was Target, it was
delivery positions and warehouse positions. And
yeah, I mean,
like
my
that.
first job when I got out was installing security systems for ADT, which was awful because those are all individual franchises. They're not actually corporate
right.
ADT.
So it's whatever franchise you work for.
And mine was horrible. And then I went and delivered packages for FedEx in rural Kentucky.
I listened to that show. You said it was freezing.
It was freezing. The heater didn't work half the time. I drove a manual box truck in the hills of Kentucky in the winter. And then from there, I delivered car parts across Louisiana.
Is it just because you didn't think about trying for anything else?
I applied for all sorts of jobs. And I got my Indeed thing. I mean, I was clicking everything, automatic apply, and then I was applying on Job Finder. I was in just literally nothing. It was the craziest thing. And then like State Farm, I did the personality assessment and failed it horribly to have my own branch. And so,
you know what? I always did terrible on those too. Don't give me a test. I'm not a test taker.
Right. Especially a personality test. They're so subjective. It's like the same question 37 times and you unintentionally answer it differently. But that was, I think, when we started Boots to Business, that was really the thing, was saying, no, there's more out here. And if somebody can take a clip or a tidbit of anything that I said or one of my guests said when we were on the show and use that as they're exiting the service to say, you know what, I can actually do more than, just stamp this timesheet and do a 9 to 5 and be a widget builder. Like if the thought's even there, the seeds planted, then Boots to Business has done exactly what it was designed to do.
Right. You mentioned something on the show about, I want to say it was transitional or transactional relationships and what exactly is that?
So in life in general, and I've used this one a long time. So there's transactional relationships and reciprocal relationships. Transactional are, I'm getting something from you that you provide with no expectation that it's going to come back to you, right? So in that one particular episode, I was talking about mental health. I don't need a reciprocal relationship with my mental health provider because I don't need your problems. I'm going to tell you mine. We're going to talk through them, but I don't need to then be that same person for you.
Okay.
So that's reciprocal. The transactional side is me saying, I'm going to get this from you. I'm not going to send it back. I'm sorry. And then reciprocal is, now you tell me your problems and I'll help you talk through yours. So business is the same way. If I'm take the public adjuster side, if I'm going to do claims for a particular contractor who's going to consistently refer me work, their expectation is that if I was on a project that didn't have a contractor, then I'd say, oh, well, I have Steve's contracting company that can do this, right?
You're talking about a referral partner.
Essentially, yeah. So the relationship has a reciprocal advantage, right? And there is a time and place for each one of those. And I am a huge proponent for reciprocal relationships. If it's transactional, I just want to know that it's transactional. I'm going to treat it that way because then I'm not going to expect anything out of you. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, well, the scale's a little unbalanced. And for service members, that's tough because everything's transactional in the Army and any of the branches.
Right.
So when you get into a space where you can actually have reciprocal relationships with people, you hold them a little bit more admiration.
Yeah.
And so it's tough though to be able to delineate those things.
And these terms and this sort of thing, this is part of your teaching, like with Robosky Consulting, right? So people can understand different personalities and relationships and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's about being able to identify where people can grow and advocating for them to grow. I mean, if you can build people into being leaders and you can help them develop personally, they're going to have an impact professionally on their people.
No, that's fascinating. She's almost like, I've listened to all this.
I just have 2 hosts of shows, so I'm like, why am I here? You guys can just talk all day.
Well, we're going to be right back with more BaaD Radio, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to BaaD Radio, brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore, because a couple that plays together stays together.
Welcome back, and I want to give a huge thank you to our sponsor, Bolts Legal. Fear no storm with boltslegal.com. 33 Tanning Spa with locations in Altamont Springs and Longwood. Andrews Law PA, auto accident attorney. AndrewsLawPA.com. Crazy Muscle Nutrition on 436 in Castleberry. And Inbalance Bodywork. You can reach Derek Brantley at 407-801-8502. All right, so we're at our last segment, and we're talking with Daniel Robosky, and he's the host with Boost to Business. And one thing I didn't mention, too, is that Melissa's your co-host.
Yep.
So how do you like fulfilling that role? I mean, I'm sure that the content's so different than what we talk about on this show.
It is, but it's also similar. We had some, PAs come on. I'm like, okay, this is kind of the same.
Personal,
but it's a little bit different. Yeah.
Well, you had a whole show about your history of being, like a military child. So I listened to all of that too, and I know we traveled as a kid, but my dad was not in the military. We spent time in Germany, but people always ask me that. Oh, you have military? I'm like, no. Yeah. So how many different places did you say that you lived?
Oh, gosh. I was born in San Diego. Then I lived in Chicago, Annapolis, Puerto Rico, and then South Georgia.
Because your dad was in the Navy, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if you came from a military background or were you the first generation?
Oh, no, I'm at the end of a long line here. So my dad was a corpsman in the Navy. My grandpa was in the Army. My great-grandfather was in the Army Air Corps, I think. But, yeah, and then, like, my wife's family's all Marines, and they're all generational as well, and her brothers were in. So, like, we are inundated with service members in our family.
So you don't think that the offspring's going to keep it going?
I don't think – I think one of my nephews might. My oldest – I don't think has the inclination to do it right now. He may. My youngest, I don't think he would be able to go. He's on the outside end of the autism spectrum, so I don't think that they would let him come in. But I would be cool with it. I think a lot of parents are not. I know that was an issue for my dad. My dad did not want any of us to go, and then I'm the youngest of 4, and I was the first one to do the service. And
then you were like on a boat or on a plane over.
No, I did a bunch of dumb stuff. And, and I remember recently having a conversation with my mom about it, because when I needed that person that had a comparable event in their life or a comparable situation, and there wasn't really anybody that I could think of other than my dad, and it just was not even he didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to talk. And even to this day, I mean, he's in he's born in 51, so he's 72. Even to this day, I can't get him to talk about anything, And so I think you have this image in your head about what your parents have done, especially if they're service members, and then you don't want to tarnish that at all. And I hope that my kids do the same, right? At the end of the day, I just want my kids to be proud that their dad was in the military.
Right.
And they're both now, my oldest is 16. Well, he'll be 16 in 3 days.
Oh, wow.
And then my youngest is 11. And so Tanner has been talking to me about military stuff because he was alive for my last 2 deployments. Cooper was not. And he's just now, last year or so, starting to ask questions. And he was like, what? But right now it's all very like video game based. He'll play a game and be like, Dad, do you know this gun? Do you know about this? Do you know about these bullets? And I'm like, yeah, buddy, I know about all that.
Kind of cute.
It is actually really cute.
And it is. But I know eventually he's going to get to a point where he's going to start asking a little bit bigger, more serious questions. Because that's
what about, like, Dad, have you ever, taken somebody out? Oh, I didn't even know how you handle that.
You don't. You say, my general response, because Tanner's asked me questions like that. And my general response almost every single time is you're not old enough to have that conversation, buddy.
Yeah.
Like when you're an adult, we can talk about it.
Yeah.
Because again, you don't want to hurt the image that your kids have of you as a parent, right? And I think for service members, that's a really easy book to read. Trauma is trauma, and that seems to be a topic in my life a lot here lately. Car accidents, abuse, whatever it is, your kids don't see that, so they don't know that version of you. So to be able to shield them from that as long as you possibly can, I think that's just a characteristic and a trait of a good parent.
Yeah. My grandfather, he's passed away, but he was a weird guy, and I never really understood him. But now that I'm older, I paid attention to the service that he did have a Purple Heart, and he was in World War II, and I did some digging, and I was able to find out where it happened, what the battle was called, and I wish that I would have understood that more while he was alive. And I would have been a little bit more understanding about why he was the way he was, because he was a hard individual. Wasn't the nicest person, but I mean, you could still he was relatable. But yeah, I wish I would have had a second chance to talk with him about it.
I could see that. I mean, I had a conversation with my oldest over Thanksgiving, and he made the comment to me. He said, "Dad," he said, "you're really hard on us." He said, "But in the same breath, you'll take the time to get us to understand why."
Yeah.
And I go through the dad guilt all the time. Like I am really tough on my kids, and I will go to bed at night just kind of beating myself up about it a lot of times. But I don't want to raise crappy adults.
Yeah, no, I get that.
But it was pretty profound for him to look at me and be like, "But then you'll explain it to us, and you make sure that we understand why you were being hard on us." So I think that's the difference in the generations, right? Is like our grandparents, they were very stoic, and that was it. You didn't get any other version of them. They didn't have to justify it to you. They just were who they were.
Exactly.
Because I said so was the most common reason.
Right?
And as a child, I remember you didn't walk into a room where adults were having a conversation and interrupt that conversation.
Oh, gosh,
you did not. And my kids, and I'm sure everybody else's kids, just come busting in there like they own the place, and they don't care what you have going on. And it's just, there's a generational difference. And so I wanted to make sure that my kids knew, while I have been through a lot of stuff, we can talk about that when you're older. The whole point is to just be a good human and be positive. And if you can impact people positively, and that's the whole point of Boots to Business, is to just try to leave some sort of positive seed with people.
Man, you could have a whole show just it's Boots to Business, but then Boots to family life, Boots to this, Boots to that.
You could, yeah.
Because it really does impact so many different people around you.
Oh, I always said it's harder on the families than the service member. We get to leave. We get to go overseas, and we get to even if we're in the soup, right? I don't have to worry about my electric bill, my water bill, my cell phone bill. I don't have to worry about groceries or kids being picky for dinner. I don't have to worry about any of that.
And y'all are busy.
And I come back.
Yep, y'all are busy, and they tell you what to do, and then you guys are just doing it. And then for the other side, it's like you don't know what's going on 2 days out.
Right.
You figure it out.
Is that when did your dad leave for spells?
My ex was in the military as well, so it was like that. So and we were across the United States for my family. So any holiday we wanted to go see family, it's like I'm booking flights for me and the kids, but I can't book his because I don't even know when he can go. It's just very go with the flow.
Well, and then you take your normal stressors of day-to-day life, right? Bills and all the other junk, and then add in loneliness, the homesickness, if you're away from your family, missing the person, not knowing what's going on, all that anxiety that comes along with it. It is significantly harder on the families than it is the service member.
Yeah, no, that's huge, definitely. And so, like I said, as Boots to Business grows, where do you kind of see it going? I mean, you've done a great job with having a variety of guests, and you said not all of them are military related, but they're all business related at some aspect.
I've had a handful of military. The first probably
I mean not all of them have been military.
Oh yes, not all of them. Correct. Yeah. Look, I think it's expanding, and I think that the goal, if I were to look 2 years in advance and say this is what I want it to be, I want there to be enough content there to, one, have a continued desire for people to want to be guests and for people to listen, but then on top of that, to the reason and justification of it being that it's good information. It's not this cookie cutter junk, and there's some positivity in there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here today. You want to give everybody your contact info?
Yep. You can find me at daniel@roboskyconsulting.com. You can find me at www.boots-2-business.com on all the socials, or you can just follow me on TikTok and everywhere else. I think I'm all over the place right now.
Awesome.
All right. And you can find me at strikingbrand.com.
And I am Angela, and I want to give a huge thank you to our sponsors, and thank you so much for tuning in. You guys have a great rest of the year. So this is it for us. So thanks so much.
Of course.